Hey, Pittsburgh. If you like walking or running and you love wine, then you don't want to miss the 5K Run Walk at Stone Villa Winery on April 27th. This event is open to all ages, and those over 21 will get a souvenir wine glass and pour of wine on race day. Plus, you'll be supporting the Nicholas Ritchell Foundation, which grants wishes to young adults and their families battling cancer. Sign up at wine5k.com/citycast and use the code CITY, that's CITY, to get 15% off the registration cost this week only. Rain or shine, there will be wine on April 27th. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, for a little over a year now, an informal group of Republican activists has been challenging our local voter rolls. We're talking thousands of challenges, all alleging that because someone moved, that means that they maybe should be wiped from the Allegheny County voter logs. But the thing is, the county already kind of does that. So today we're talking about how all this got started, what officials are saying about it, and what you can do as a voter to protect your vote if one of these letters comes your way. It's Wednesday, March 20th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. I'm with a couple of reporters who have teamed up to try to make sense of all of this. Julia Zankovich covers county government for WESA. Hi, Julia.
Hey, Megan.
And Charlie Wolfson is a government and accountability reporter for Public Source. Charlie, welcome back.
Thank you.
So people have been getting these letters from Allegheny County, very official looking, informing them that their voter registrations have been challenged, quote, on the basis of residence. What does that mean?
So all it basically means is that these people showed up on the Postal Service's list of people who filed for a change of address, and that they are also currently registered to vote in Allegheny County. But of course, the fact that you filed a change of address with the Postal Service in the past does not mean that you don't live here anymore.
Yeah, there's a bunch of reasons why you might do it, like a temporary thing. You had an example in your story about a girl who maybe thinks maybe it was because she had an internship briefly.
Yeah, this one woman, Clara Osberg, who we quoted in the story, she filed for a change of address in 2021 to go do an internship in Michigan. She did not register to vote while in Michigan. She moved back 3 months later, filed a change of address to come back, and just resumed her life here in Pittsburgh. And that's obviously a situation where the person should still be eligible to vote here, but because they showed up on the change of address, these people challenged her voter registration status. So that's just an example of how this can go wrong.
And it seems to be mostly going wrong. Thousands of people in Allegheny County have been getting these letters. What happens to you if you get one?
In the near term, basically nothing will happen to these people. That was not clear when all of this started, but the county elections division and the Pennsylvania Department of State determined that nobody's going to be taken off the voter rolls immediately because of these more than 16,000 challenges.
But like 16,000 letters seems like a lot for a small group of people to have put out there, especially if it's not going to technically do anything. Do we know how many total voters have been purged from the voter rolls as a result of any of this?
Yeah, so nobody has been purged from the voter rolls.
Not a single person?
No, actually, when they very first began, they sent just 9 of these challenges in. And the county did, for one reason or another, purge 4 people from the voter rolls at that time. And then when this all kind of picked up steam and became a lot bigger, the county talked with their counterparts at the state, and they realized that that was not what they should have done. And they ended up putting those 4 people back on the voter rolls, they tell us. So no, it's our belief that nobody has been removed from the rolls because of this.
But that was definitely a concern of some of the people we talked to. You know, it comes on this very official letterhead from the county, and people are worried that they might not be able to vote, but they will, in fact, be able to vote. You are still registered at your polling place, and you can contact the county and say, hey, I still live here. Give them proof of your address in Allegheny County, and that should solve everything.
Well, so who's behind it all? I can understand, you file an initial 9, you see that something has happened, and maybe that excites you to continue the good fight as you believe it to be. Introduce us to Anthony, one of the central pieces of your story.
Yeah, so this all started in 2022 when Anthony Golombieski, a retired PennDOT employee turned GOP committeeman, basically started knocking on doors. And he said that there were people in the voter rolls basically still registered to Allegheny County residences, even though they didn't live here anymore. And so he kind of started this crusade to get those people off the rolls by comparing post office change of address records with the Allegheny County voter rolls.
I had no idea change of address records were public. So that in and of itself is a brand new learning for me.
I didn't either before we did this.
Well, what convinced him that this was necessary, that it was that crusade was that important, that he needed to take it upon himself to right the wrongs?
So that's a great question. And that's what we wanted to figure out, because he certainly went to a lot of trouble during his retirement to do all this.
I was kind of floored by the level of paperwork y'all wrote about. For each one, it's 2 pages. It needs to be notarized. It's an affidavit. And the person who actually files it has to live in the municipality. So Anthony was having to recruit a lot of people to get in on this.
Yes. So we tried to figure out what his ultimate driving motivation was. He was very adamant that he is not accusing anyone of voter fraud, and he's not motivated by fraud that he thinks occurred in the past. However, he did kind of hint at, there could have been problems with the election last year when Sarah Innamorato won by 10,000 votes, which is less than the number of challenges he's filed. But then he would also say, I'm not accusing anyone of fraud. I'm not going to do that. But a couple of other kind of counterpoints to him saying that. One is that Sam DeMarco, who's the chairman of the local Republican Party, pretty much...
And on county council.
Yes, and the Board of Elections, pretty much explicitly told us, Anthony and the people working on this are motivated by the conspiracy theories about the 2020 election, and they think that election was stolen, which, of course, it was not. And also, if you could go to Anthony's Facebook page, and there's a lot of content on there which suggests that he thinks there was widespread voter fraud, particularly around mail-in ballots, which, again, there's no evidence of. So he according to him, he just wants to make sure that the county elections division is, quote, doing their jobs. But there might be more to it than that.
But that's the funny thing, right? Doesn't the county already have a mechanism for this? I imagine it's probably slower, because almost anything would be. But how does it usually work? Yeah,
so it definitely is slower than than Anthony would like, but that's dictated by the law. The law says that unless a voter, reaches out and says, "Hey, I moved, you could take me off the rolls," then it takes several years for them to be taken off. It takes first 5 years of not voting, and then if that happens, you're put on what's called the inactive list. Then after that, it takes 2 more federal elections, which is every 2 years. So 4 more years. At that point, it's been 9 years. Then they can just remove your name, which they do that.
Wait, so Charlie, is that why, so I left the state of Kentucky, almost 11 years ago now. I still get texts occasionally about who I'm voting for in Kentucky. Is this just part of that same system? It just takes that long to get cleansed of all of these lists?
Yes, and it's set by federal law. So these standards apply everywhere, not just Pennsylvania. And if you're sick of getting those texts about Kentucky candidates, you can call up whoever's in charge of the voter rolls where you used to live and ask them to remove you, and the text should stop pretty much immediately.
Wow. Thank you. Now I know. This one's for my parents out there. If you've got a kiddo ready for grades 9 through 12, City Charter High School is looking for you. They're hosting a new admissions open house on March 23rd from 10 a.m. to noon, where parents and prospective students can tour the school, check out classrooms, talk with teachers and student ambassadors, and apply, all right there in person. City High has been educating in the heart of downtown for over 20 years. Weekly schedules run Tuesday to Friday, year-round, and educators stay with the same students all 4 years. Plus, there's no tuition. All City High graduates complete college and career planning classes, a 13-week mentored internship, and get real-world experience with research, writing, problem-solving, and decision-making. And I kind of wish I'd learned this part sooner, even the art of presentation. If you want your youngin' to finish 12th grade with a resume, job training, and networking experience, consider City Charter High School. Visit cityhigh.org for more information or to apply today. Well, I guess more broadly, is voter fraud a thing that we should be worried about? Because I feel like we see study after study saying that in the U.S., at least, it's just like not really a thing. The penalties are enormous. Y'all wrote about that in your story. But I mean, is that something that anyone is concerned about, at least here in Allegheny County?
The elections experts we spoke to said that, fraud is extremely, extremely rare, and even rarer in numbers that could sway an election. So basically, they said, the problem with this effort isn't necessarily that it's not rooting out fraud, but that it could sow insecurity or disinformation, conspiracy theories, basically reduce people's confidence in local elections, which generally are pretty securely run, which officials from both parties told us.
We don't mean to say that fraud is not a concern or people shouldn't be worried about the idea of election fraud, but just that the systems we currently have in place have been proven to be pretty effective at preventing it. And there's not really much evidence to the contrary.
Are other places, states, municipalities, counties dealing with anything like this? Is this sometimes with strategies like this, you can see it float across whole groups of people in wide swaths of the country. Is that the case for this particular strategy?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question because as we were reporting the story, we learned about something very, very similar that's happening in other states in an effort that appears a lot more organized and kind of well-funded than this one. Some people with very close ties to Donald Trump are doing something like this in Michigan, Nevada, and Georgia, I believe, which are all swing states. And they're using some more sophisticated software than the people here are. But we were we did not identify any real tie between those people and the people working here in Allegheny County, and the people here explicitly denied being connected to them. But even so, it is hard to ignore that this exact or a very similar thing is happening in different states.
You mentioned the software. That was the first thing that came up when I was talking about your story with a friend this morning, is they were like, oh God, are they using AI to do this? And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure this dude does it by hand, which is kind of both more impressive and also sort of shocking.
Yeah, it's so the software that is used elsewhere is called Eagle AI, which I assume is why your friend asked that. I don't know that it actually uses AI. It could be one of those things where people just take a piece of software and call it AI nowadays. But they are using, technology.
Got it. Well, I guess on the flip side, do you think that there's any risk to people that they could be wrongly removed from the voter rolls? Just speaking for myself, I know I am terrible at opening my snail mail. So I can absolutely see somebody either getting the letter or putting it aside or just never opening it, throwing it away, whatever. They just don't realize that their status has been challenged in this way. So, if people show up on election day, will they still be able to vote?
Yeah. So if you show up to the poll and they say, your residence is being challenged, but you say, I still live here, they might ask you to sign a sworn statement just affirming that you still live in Allegheny County. But once you sign that, you should be able to vote.
That is excellent news. Before we go, where does that leave our boy Anthony? He's filed all of these challenges. In your story, you shared this glorious moment where he learns that the county already takes care of people who move away. So is he going to keep doing this, or will he stand down?
Yeah, so he said, after I asked him all these questions and kind of pointed out everything else that we had learned through this, two things happened. One, he said, all of that. He said, if it turns out the county has been doing this, I will be at peace. That's a quote. But then he also texted me shortly thereafter saying, we've delivered another 1,000 challenges to the Board of Elections. So I have no clear signal that he's going to stop in light of our reporting. I haven't heard from him at all since it published yet, but I would expect this to continue.
Okay.
I also don't want to say that there's zero risk of people being disenfranchised. We saw with those 4 original people who got taken off. They, for a time, were taken off the voter rolls. Eventually, they were put back on, but that just kind of goes to show this all depends on people who work for the county doing the right thing according to the law, which it appears that they are now, and we'll certainly be keeping an eye on how this goes to see what happens, because they're going to be submitting a lot more challenges, we think, going forward. But I would definitely encourage people to check their voter registration just to be sure, because you never know what might have happened.
Is there a source y'all recommend for folks to check that?
You can check it on the Pennsylvania Department of State's website. That's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Cool. We will make sure we've got that linked in our show notes, along with the wonderful story by Julia and Charlie. Thank you both so much for joining us on CityCast Pittsburgh.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're liking what we do here, consider joining our membership program. You get ad-free episodes, members-only updates, and best of all, you'll be helping ensure that we can keep making this show and the Hey Pittsburgh newsletter for years to come. Find out more and sign up at membership.citycast.fm/Pittsburgh. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
Anthony also is the guy who, 4 years ago, sued Pittsburgh over the assault rifle ban. So he's kind of has some local notoriety for that. And if you Google his name, you'll find news clips about that.